My name is Keith Skinner. I'm with the Beltline Church of Christ, and for our Shepherd's Devotional today, I'd like to focus on uh, the idea of obedience. I've been reading the book by David Young entitled King Jesus, The Beauty of Obedience-Based Discipleship, and I'd like to share an experience that Tina and I had last Sunday that I think makes that point very well and hopefully can be an encouragement to you. I've been thinking a lot about this idea of obedience, and I've landed on this idea that obedience can manifest itself in many ways. It doesn't have to be checking a box of do's and don'ts. It can just be willing to be used as God's instrument. Let me share a story of how I think we saw that in action this past week. We attended church service at a church plant close to our home, and the setting is a little different than what we're used to at a place like Beltline, for example. We sat in a large gathering space where there were a number of round tables where 4, 5, 6 people could sit at a table, and that accomplished two purposes. Number one, it provided for the social distancing aspect with respect to COVID and the conditions we live in today. But number two, it offered the opportunity to make a connection with a small group that was at your table. And at our table, a young man who's a junior in the college here in town where we were living joined us. And prior to service, we got to know his name, where he's from, exchanged pleasantries and that sort of thing. The service was conducted. It was very nice. And then at the end, the format where we were attending was such that we had note cards where we were asked questions from the service, the message that was presented, and we had the opportunity to answer individually and then discuss as a group. And in doing so, that gave us the opportunity to get to know this young man much better. We learned that he's from a large extended family that's made up of a number of different denominational groups and organizations, but there's no real spiritual leadership in his home. So I asked him, how did you end up here, pretty significant distance from home, at a Christian university? And he told me a story. He said as a teenager, he used to drive up and down the streets of his town past a church building that had a sign, like many churches do. But somebody at that church treated that sign as a ministry and as a way to follow Christ's command to go and make disciples. Because every week there would be a scriptural message with a Bible verse supporting that. And that young man said he looked forward eagerly every week to see what the message was for that week. He would go look up the verse, read it, the message that was on the sign, and try to make the application and understand the point of the verse. And eventually that led him to one Sunday morning. He attended that church by himself, no family members. He was met there by two men who eventually became mentors to him, who answered his questions, who studied with him, and ultimately baptized him. And that led him to the college he is attending now. He's a junior there. He's an RA in his dorm, and he told us he has the express purpose of wanting to influence as many people as he can to be Christ followers, and one day he wants to be a youth minister. To me, that is obedience in action. Someone took a sign ministry and took that to heart and made it have an impact. I'm sure each week when he's putting that message, he or she putting that message out there, doesn't know what the potential impact is going to be, but they're being obedient to God's command. And two men who served as mentors to this young man, following the gospel call to make disciples. It's an amazing process, an amazing concept. We ended up taking that young man to lunch. We had a great conversation. We talked, and hopefully one day we will be able to establish an even stronger relationship with him to encourage him in his future plans. So I hope that you'll see from this story that obedience can manifest itself in many ways if we're willing to be God's tools and allow him to work. So I want to encourage you to focus on that this week and watch what amazing things the Lord can do.